All right, excellent. All right. Hey, I'm just going to do a quick intro. Hey, it's Dr. Eric on the Relentless Vitality Podcast. I am super excited to have an awesome guest on my show, Dr. George Touliatos. He's an author, expert, and scientific advisor to Muscle Mag and muscular development. He's an MD. He's specializing in medical use of hormones, TRT, PEDs, medical contributor in the Anabolics book, and he's a competitive bodybuilder himself. Has done shows throughout Greece. He comes to us from Greece, but he's actually going to be visiting us here in the States here very shortly. He'll talk a little bit about that. Hey, George, how you doing, man?
Hello, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dr. George was just telling me about his upcoming trip. He's going to be doing, sounds like he's be putting on some conferences and lectures here, and he can talk about that. But yeah, I just wanted to have you on, George, because I just love getting guests on my show to talk about hormonal optimization. I talk about peptides, anti-aging, longevity, all the above. So I try to get guests on that share my passion for muscle medicine and hormones, etc. And always looking to push the envelope and learn, especially from individuals like yourself who have also walked the walk and talked the talk, and especially from overseas, because I'm curious how things are in Greece and Europe compared to here in the States in terms of regulations, medical usage, and things. So if you don't mind, you've probably done this a million times, but you can give a quick, my listeners at least, a quick synopsis of you, how you got here, and a little bit about what you're doing here in the States, and we can talk a little bit more about hormones and testosterone and steroids.
Yeah, so my bodybuilding career started right after finishing the medical school, as I was practicing GP in the country, so age 26. So I had a basic background about science, I was lifting since I was in high school, since I was 16 years old. And my first show was at 26, so 10 years of lifting. And I have to tell you that during my first show, my steroid use was minimal. And my knowledge was very narrow, very limited based on the magazines I was able to purchase, Flex, Muscle Fitness, MD, And then totally, I competed in 10 shows in 4 different years. So 2009, I took a huge break in order to, my obligations was as a practicing physician, in biopathology. And then 2010, and then I retired as I was finishing my residency in biopathology, 2013 at the master's. And I have to tell you, back then, I was not aware of the potential side effects, of the dangers that the anabolic androgenic steroids and performance-enhancing drugs enclose. And I was more thinking as an athlete rather than as a physician. Later, as you age, you take under consideration your health and your longevity way more than in your youth, because you think you're not vulnerable in your 20s or your 30s. And I was very competitive. I wanted to be very competitive, and perhaps I didn't have the supreme genetics to be big, and I was just aesthetic. I was perhaps abusing a little bit of the gear that I had to, and my labs were not that good. But hopefully, I come from a medical background. My folks and my sister were doctors. I was having my regular checkups, and I was taking care of my health a little bit more seriously rather than the other guys. Anyway, so exactly 10 years ago, I started writing books in Greece based on my experience as a bodybuilder who had retired, and of course my knowledge as a physician. So totally, I wrote 4 editions, so 2012, 2013, 2015, and 2018. Meanwhile, Bill Welling had discovered me online, and I was able also to participate in some podcasts in Superhuman Radio by Colin Orr, and later by Dave Palumbo, so with Ron McLean, with Jay Campbell, with Generation Iron. And the killing combination was that I was not just a theoretical doctor, I was somebody who was abusing. I was a steroid junkie myself right after medical school. And I was walking the walk and talking the talk. So this is a lethal combination, okay? And I was open-minded, and frankly, the bodybuilders look at me somebody on their own, So it's not just a doctor who doesn't care or demonize steroids. I couldn't be hypocritical. So they had somebody that could be outspoken and open up their abuse. And I focus now mainly on harm reduction rather than on the steroid cycles. It's very easy to get doped. The point is how to avoid the potential side effects and minimize the risk in order to have more longevity, all right? So right after I wrote this, I mean, Bill Welling poked me a question. He offered me a great opportunity. So he told me to start writing for Anabolic Order in 2015. I wrote for him around 15 to 18 articles. And then he gave me this tremendous opportunity to be on the cover of Anabolic's book. And I wrote an article for him about the intramuscular abscess, because as a biopathologist, I focus also with inflammation and infections. And I was having myself a horrible abscess due to the Winstrol injection in my glute. So I was talking also from personal experience. And in 2017, I dared to publish my first English book translated. It was Just the Drugs. And then I had an improved edition the year after. Then Muscular Development discovered me and advertised this. So I was able then during the pandemic to write down to actually to translate the nutrition and the supplementation of my Greek books. So I released another book, and finally everything was united in English as the Bible of Bodybuilding, that now is my ultimate book, just like the Bible of Bodybuilding in Greece. So I have in both languages. And yes, I was offered also to translate this in Italian, the drugs. So totally, yes, I've accomplished to write 9 books. But actually one book is the evolution of the other, okay? So the material and what it deals is just training, nutrition, supplementation, and harm reduction. So it's about bodybuilding and physical education. It's not something totally different. So there is a little bit also of TRT, HRT, longevity, and the aging. Myself, I follow HRT since I retired because my HPDA was crashed, okay? My total testosterone was 150, 6 months right after I retired. I was miserable. There's no way I could recover from a secondary anabolic steroid-induced hypogonadism, okay? And I went to Italy to find my mentor, Dr. Massimo Spatini, who's a 60-year-old guy, former Mr. Italy, sports medicine doctor who focused on the aging, author also, so he's my alter ego. And we have a great relationship, so he put me on testosterone, but back then the protocols are really archaic, you know, we're just injecting once a week, not the frequent microdosing we do now, all right? So I experimented myself, and according to Dr. Hertog, who's the best anti-aging doctor, it's better to take a plethora of hormones rather than just testosterone, for instance. It's better to have a good hormonal profile, and actually we age because the hormones decline.
That's an awesome story. And I think it's great that, as you mentioned, that you speak from your personal experience as well. I'll have to look at some of your books. I mean, I'm not a bodybuilder. I've worked out since I was a teenager as well, done all kinds of sports, but a lot of my patients are, bodybuilders, strength trainers, powerlifters, jujitsu guys and things. So I think that's fascinating. I'm big on HRT and the appropriate use of testosterone. As you mentioned, you've probably dealt with this too, patients coming to me on those old protocols. And I'm a fan also of multiple dosing a week and managing as you mentioned, managing the risks. I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about some of the anabolics, because a lot of these, specifically some of the medical uses, I don't know if you still use them for patients for medical uses for, pain and healing and things, but, I have, several people who've come to me asking about that, things like nandrolone, et cetera, for, chronic issues or chronic, pain issues from surgeries, healing, things of this nature.
Yeah, sure. Nandrolone DECA is widely implemented in medicine. Actually, it's the #1 steroid that is used almost for 60 years. I was injecting my grandmother DECA. She lived to 105 in order to avoid, in order to improve rehabilitation and to avoid osteoporosis and muscle wasting. Nandrolone is very useful because apart from the classic indication, which is muscle wasting, anemia, and osteoporosis, it has this positive effect through aldosterone stimulation that retains sodium and water as a result to influx water into the synovial cavity. So this fluid retention that smooths the pain and the aches into the shoulders. Okay, so you don't need a lot of it. Just 50 milligrams per week is enough, because we have to know, along when you stack testosterone with nandrolone, the EPO will elevate, okay? And perhaps you're gonna have a reduction also in the HDL, or perhaps elevation in LDL. So you should focus on small dosing, also microdosing, why not? It's better in the system if you inject 5 milligrams every day rather than 50 milligrams at once. It has a lesser impact on the system, okay? Yes, DECA has a wide implementation. Of course, it reverses osteoporosis, it increases bone mineral density. Of course, it treats anemia, it improves stamina and endurance. And definitely, it's a very decent anabolic steroid with an anabolic index of 140. It's way better than other drugs, and it's not toxic to the liver, it's not severely alkylated, but in the long run, because it retains calcium in the renal tubules, it may lead to calcification of the arteries in case you abuse other steroids as well, or if you don't use the K2 vitamin that is able to absorb and direct actually the calcium from the endothelium of the arteries to the bone tissue. Okay, yes, DECA, other steroids that have implementation, apart from testosterone, of course, is mesterone. Proviron is not available in the States, but we use it in Europe in order to crush this HBG to elevate more free testosterone, which is the bioavailable. All right, it gives you the feeling also of euphoria because it improves the cognitive function, the self-esteem, the sex drive. But of course, it may enlarge the prostate, cause you BPH, another thing from cancer, of course, and if you're prone to hair thinning. Now, instead of the mesterone, which is synthetic DHT actually, occasionally some open-minded doctors in the States prescribe oxandrolone because it's a derivative of the DHT that has same properties, stanozolol as well, that can lower HBG. So they use Western and Anavar as libido enhancers because they elevate the free testosterone this way. They don't produce estrogen, okay? But of course, we have to admit that 70-alkylated drugs, they can be potentially harmful to the lipids and to the liver. All right. Prim also is pharmaceutical grade, is not very strong anabolic, is not available in the States. It was available in Greece, in Spain, in Turkey. These are the steroids that, you know, are really harmless, and you can easily found in pharmacies worldwide, you know?
Yep. No, that's excellent. Thank you. I'm curious, what is the regulatory environment over there, I guess, in Greece and Europe compared to here, the States, in terms of testosterone and the anabolics? Is there?
Yes, generally in Europe, we have hormonophobia, means the fear of hormones, and endocrinologists and urologists demonize testosterone because of two reasons. First of all, the ignorance, because they misjudge and they mislead, and they believe testosterone is an anabolic steroid. Actually, it's an androgen that has anabolic properties.
Right.
You cannot live without testosterone if you are a man, but you can live without anabolic steroids, definitely, as estrogens are fundamental and vital for women during menopause. Okay. So in Klinefelter syndrome, you don't prescribe anabolic steroids, but you prescribe testosterone because this is what will make you a man. All right. So the abuse of testosterone from bodybuilding and athletes gives this bad name to the medical society, this fear, okay, this skepticism. But definitely an androgen is very important in order to have all the positive effects that testosterone has to the bones, to the bone marrow, to the liver that creates HBG, to the skin that creates the sebum, the elasticity, okay? But also testosterone is fundamental because it is reduced to DHT, which is important for the cognitive function, the self-esteem, and the sex drive, but also estradiol, which is very important to the bone health and also for cardiovascular health, for sex drive, okay? So we cannot replace testosterone with any other thing for the replacement therapy. Okay, and we have to admit that testosterone is zero toxicity in injectable form under 200 milligrams to the liver and to the lipids. Unless you abuse, let's say, over to 50, that may have you an elevation and a reduction in HDL, elevation in estradiol, perhaps giant occasionally, or erythrocytosis, of course, as all androgens treat anemia.
Are most of the people you work with, are they in the bodybuilding space? You mentioned in terms of like harm risk reduction, like what are some of the strategies you've utilized with them? Or do you have patients that are not in the bodybuilding space looking to?
Yes. So the bodybuilders and the athletes, but also middle-aged men that undergo the crisis, the andropause,
yep.
Okay, and they cannot communicate with endocrinologists that you have to be super low, almost dead, in order to prescribe you Nebido and nothing else, no NF8. And if you're very close, let's say 250 or 300, they give you the magic blue pill that obviously doesn't treat hypogonadism. It's right. Just an artificial blood flow to the penis. Okay, so it's pathetic because with low testosterone, you start developing insulin-resistant diabetes, obesity. That creates also, both of them, metabolic syndrome. Okay, metabolic syndrome is linked to cardiovascular disease also. And definitely anemia, fatigue, lack of stamina and endurance, osteopenia, bone fractures, depression, lack of sex drive, lack of erectile dysfunction that leaves you a lousy life. Okay. And imagine what, I had a case of a 60-year-old heart sergeant, Harvard, he studied in Harvard, okay? So yeah. Brilliant guy. Yeah, Harvard graduate. He had a heart attack and he discovered he was low testosterone. And he told me, doctor, can you prescribe me testosterone for a better cardiovascular health? The heart surgeon told me that. No, it's crazy because low testosterone gives you high cardiovascular disease. And testosterone improves the blood flow, the nitric oxide to the myocardium. And also it can treat dyslipidemia by improving the visceral fat because androgens oxidize fat. Also, you build muscle tissue that burns the fat. And through reduction of the visceral fat, you have improvement in the dyslipidemia, in the LDL, in the HDL. Okay, and also, as you build muscles, you burn the glucose, you fight insulin resistance. And this is how the cardiovascular health is improved.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, you sound, I say the same thing to my patients all the time. I try to preach the benefits of it. Pretty much everybody gets it. And I'm glad to hear you talk about some of the other metabolites like DHT and estradiol, because those are massively important. I still get, you probably see this too, patients come to me wanting to block their estrogen and block their DHT. And I advise them against that because of the metabolic benefits. So that's huge.
Yes, and we have to know that under COVID, almost everybody who died in the ICU was of low testosterone. Yep. Because they were over 70, because they are administered corticosteroids that kill also the testosterone, because you have the physical and the mental stress, you're going to die, and prolactin cortisol spike that eat out testosterone. And also because of low testosterone, you create this visceral fat, and this flabby fat releases inflammatory cytokines that participate in the cascade of the inflammation. Right. So it's, you have better chance of survival if you are eugonadal and enter the ICU rather than being of low testosterone. You know, you're screwed, but you don't have chances of surviving.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is proved this year. It was proved, and I was telling this since last year, and many doctors were trolling at me as a steroid junkie and things like that, you know.
Yeah, I saw some of those studies as well. As you mentioned, the people with the lower androgen levels did poorly. You know, because of all the anti-inflammatory properties, the metabolic effects you just mentioned. Huge misconception. I think it's, as you mentioned, I think it's the people that abuse it and do the wrong things are the ones that create the big press, you know. So
yeah, so it's about optimization and balance of all the hormones. Okay, abuse leads to the side effects, and HRT or TRT is not about getting jacked, but being physically and mentally healthy. Right. And of course, every benefit you're going to have within physical appearance and the body composition is welcome. But you shouldn't focus on the gym or you know how I'm going to get bigger, but on all the plethora of the side effects. But you shouldn't go over the upper range of the total testosterone. You know, you should be a teenager, but nothing more.
Well said. I agree 100%. What other kind of issues are you seeing with some of your patients, especially those who've gone through cycles or been through some issues in the past in terms of risk mitigation and post therapy?
Well, the classic deviations and the classic side effects are estimated in three organs: cardiovascular by dyslipidemia and erythrocytosis. Okay, that leads to cardiovascular disease, of course. Then we have the transaminemia, or the pharmaceutical hepatitis of the mainly from the pills, but also prolonged use of injectables. And also we have lowering of GFR, elevation of creatinine and urea to a lesser degree. And some of them are into acute or chronic renal failure. Okay, these are the main systems that are affected. The most important, of course, the cardiovascular, the brain and the heart. We have to admit that the liver has a huge capacity of regeneration. Okay, and the kidneys, we have to know that they gradually downregulate, and if the GFR goes below 50, you're in trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I heard you mention on another podcast about some of the issues with, especially I guess more in the bodybuilding space, of how many people are using it. And of course, we've seen here in the States, unfortunately, there's been a lot of deaths in the last couple of years of former bodybuilders, and that could be multifactorial too. But it sounds like it's quite rampant over there.
I think, Eric, it's like using the steroids, like buying with a credit card. You buy now, you pay the dues later.
Yeah, for sure.
It comes now. If you want to mess with steroids, you shouldn't smoke, booze, sniff, eat junk, and you should do also your daily cardio. So stay out of everything which is risk if you want to mess up with the drugs. And if you want to use steroids, make sure you don't combine pills together. You use pharmaceutical grade. You take also your precautious supplementation for your lipids, for your liver, okay? In order to minimize the risk, because frankly, there's zero risk when there's no use.
Right. Now, over there in Greece, are you, like here in the States, of course, we have most of our, my colleagues and I, we use compounding pharmacies. Of course, the traditional pharmacies don't,
yeah.
They use kind of the weaker forms, or they don't let you optimize your dosages. How is the pharmaceutical industry there?
Yeah, hopefully I'm able to cooperate with a compounding pharmacy that sells HRT compounds across Europe, but also overseas. And they make Masterolin, they make DHT synthetic liposomal cream. Mm-hmm. They make, of course, liposomal 20% testosterone. Also, another pharmacy compounds dutasteride with minoxidil in foam in order to avoid the side effects of dutasteride for the erectile dysfunction. Okay, so if you apply locally dutasteride with testosterone and minoxidil, you avoid the systemic side effects, and it's just locally in order to avoid the hair thinning. But we have to know that dutasteride and finasteride work only with testosterone. If you use proviron, it doesn't work. It only blocks the reduction of testosterone to the DHT. But of course, as you mentioned, killing DHT is not something cool, okay? We need also DHT, as we need estrogens. Now the regulations and the laws in Greece, they're quite loose. Only selling, is prohibited. So personal use is permitted, but distribution is a felony. Okay, and frankly, everybody can go to the pharmacy and get a testosterone, but not DECA easily, because DECA is an anabolic steroid, so you need a prescription. But everybody can get testosterone proviron easily. It's rather cheap. It's around $7, the 250 vial of enanthate. Also, we have Nebido Avid from Bayer, from Germany. And we have the natural 50 milligrams that comes in $3 from Aspen. Okay. The natural decaneated decadurabolin.
Right.
We used to have 20 years ago primobolan also, 100 milligrams, but it's no longer manufactured. Gotcha.
Okay. What you mentioned before we started recording about what you're going to be talking about in terms of muscle and metabolism, etc. Yes. Do you mind touching on that and telling people about what we're going to be discussing?
Yeah. So the Olympic University for the first time is held in Las Vegas, where the Mr. Olympia is also taking place. And actually, Michael Palmieri is under cooperation with Dan Solomon, which is the president of Mr. Olympia. Now, Michael Palmieri is the one that organizes, along with the late Jim Lorimer, the Arnold Educational Seminars in Columbus, Ohio during the Arnold Classic every March of the year, the first week. And I was invited twice. So 2020, just before the COVID, and 2022, last March. Mm-hmm. And we had a roundtable about the TRT, HRT, and AAS. And the second year, that is last March, I had also my own presentation, which was the testosterone replacement therapy in retired bodybuilders and anabolic steroid use, anabolic and anogenic steroids harm reduction, and also bodybuilders. So now my next presentation, the following Friday, will be the role of the skeletal muscle as a metabolic regulator. And we have to know that muscle tissue is not just for locomotory purposes, not just for posture or breathing or moving. You know, without muscle, you're more vulnerable, not just to fractures and to, neuromuscular coordination and conjunction, but also you get easier sick because it's a great pool of amino acids that synthesize immunoglobulins. Okay, muscle wasting is the #1 cause of death during catabolic diseases like HIV, COVID, and cancer. Okay, and also the lesser muscle you have, the more insulin resistance you have. And the more insulin resistance and diabetes you have, the more cardiovascular disease you're gonna face. All right. So we understand that muscles are able to reverse glycemia. Lifting weights and building muscle is anti-diabetic. Okay, they improve the insulin sensitivity, the assimilation of the glucose. You improve the GLUT4 receptors, and you improve, of course, the bone mineral density, because as muscles get strengthened, they attach to the bones, and the bones, as a result, also become more dense. Okay. Of course, you need proper amount of vitamin D3 and calcium. And we have to know that aging is associated with elevation of SHBG. This is a protein that downregulates the free testosterone, which is bioavailable. Why is that? SHBG elevates as we get older because we have more visceral fat that creates estrogen. So as estrogens elevate, SHBG elevate, that lowers free testosterone. So very simplified, we can say that the lesser muscle you have, the lesser sex drive you're gonna have. Okay, because the more muscles you have, the less fat you have. Fat creates estrogens. Less estrogens, lower SHBG, higher free testosterone. So there's all related to each other. And for elderly people, muscle tissue is so important because when they are disabled down in bed, okay, they're not able to coordinate their muscles. So having strong muscles and muscle coordination is very fundamental and very important for the third age.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%. I talk about the dangers of sarcopenia all the time, as it's
sarcopenia, yes.
As you mentioned, it's not just for looks and structure. You know, like you said, it's the biggest, a huge metabolic organ. It creates myokines in the body with beneficial effects. It's insulin sensitivity, all the things you talked about.
Mauro Di Pasquale, this doctor who's a powerlifter, said, "We carry our own fat, and our muscles carry us."
Yes.
So that means how significant is the muscle versus the tissue, the fat, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Do you have other strategies you utilize with some of your older patients to maintain muscle mass in terms of supplements?
Yes. So now, from perception of supplementation, we have leucine post-workout that kicks mTOR. Glutamine, that even though it's not an essential amino acid, is the most fundamental amino acid in the skeletal muscle. And during stress and catabolism, glutamine stores are depleted. Okay. So glutamine is also good post-workout for muscle glycogen synthesis, okay, for volumization of the cell. Creatine monohydrate is the most anabolic supplement, of course, but apart from muscle contraction and ATP synthesis, is very good for the brain metabolism also, okay. Whey protein now contains a large amount of BCAAs, leucine, okay, and a decent amount of glutamine. And HMB also is very good combination pre-workout as anti-catabolic, and it's perfectly stacked with creatine monohydrate. All right. Resistance training, of course, is the stimulus, and we should focus, if you want muscular development, 8 to 12 reps, okay? Time under tension, focus on eccentric contraction, and keep intensity below 1 minute of resting time in order to keep the intensity higher. Of course, a multivitamin pack. And now from hormonal perspective, we have the testosterone, we have the DHEA that also improves immunity, all right? For people that can afford, using growth hormone is good, a very low dose for longevity, because in the first place, what hormone does is fat burning, all right? And it burns the visceral fat also, it improves lipids. But if you abuse it, then comes the trouble with diabetes, also, and organomegaly. So how you evaluate the lack of the deficiency of growth hormone? By measuring IGF-1 in the blood, all right? And low IGF-1 also is linked to mortality as much as high IGF-1 is linked to cancer as well. Right. So you should be optimized above the 50%, all right? Pregnenolone also is very important. Pregnenolone metabolized to progesterone, calms down the nervous system, improves memory, all right? It's better than taking progesterone itself, in men at least. Now, DHT synthetic is very good for the sex drive, for the mind, for the cognitive function, the self-esteem. And HG also, apart from ball size and ejaculation volume, it can improve the steroidogenesis, because as we inject testosterone, we cut off the cascade from cholesterol to testosterone. Therefore, by implementing HG, it can improve also intratesticular production of testosterone that improves sex drive, but also synthesis of DHEA, progesterone, pregnenolone. That's very good for the steroidogenesis, okay? Of course, this is not this is an expensive stock, of course, and it comes down to the guidance of an open-minded physician, and very few are aware of this. The best is to find somebody that also follows this for himself, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I use a lot of DHEA and pregnenolone on my patients on testosterone, and it's difficult to prescribe growth hormone, but I do use a lot of peptides to induce growth hormone production. They're quite successful.
Sermorelin, GSRP6, RP2, MK677, which is oral. And they are safer actually for the HF1 elevation, but they're cheaper also. All right.
They are. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're much less expensive, and they work very well, very safe.
Yes.
Well. So where can people read about, find your books, and go ahead and plug any websites, any conferences?
Yeah, my website is gtoul.com. I have a monthly column on Muscular Development Magazine, a weekly show on Muscular Development Channel, and my books, The Bible of Bodybuilding, which is the latest, but my other books also, they can purchase them on Amazon, okay?
Awesome. Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. Well, yeah, I'd love to, I have to go see another patient here shortly as well. I will let you get back. I would love to have you back on sometime and talk some more.
Sure.
This has been fantastic.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I wish you have an awesome week and a good Christmas holiday, and good luck with your visit.
Thank you.
By the way, will you be at the Arnold this year?
Yes, I have booked everything for